Hello everyone, and welcome to the Rosetta Stone Channel. Today, we're going to be reading the story and lore of the game Bioshock Infinite. Sit back, relax. Alrighty then. Picture this, if you will. Bring us the girl and wipe away the debt. That was the deal. The details elude me now. But the details wouldn't change a goddamn thing. Booker, do it. Chapter 1. The Lighthouse. Booker DeWitt is a man of partial Native American descent who was born on April 19th of 1874. At the age of 16, he was a member of the 7th Cavalry Regiment of the United States Army and took part in the Wounded Knee Massacre of 1890. At Wounded Knee, a sergeant had accused him of having Native American lineage in front of the men in his unit. To avoid being stigmatized by his comrades, he scalped Native American victims and burned teepees with men, women, and children still inside. Due to his gruesome actions, other members of the regiment, including Cornelius Slate, gave him the nickname the White Injun because of his taking trophies from his victims. Booker was ultimately awarded a Medal of Honor and ranked as a staff sergeant in the U.S. Army. Although he was seen as a hero to his fellow soldiers, Booker felt shame and regret for his part in the massacre. After the battle, Booker fraught with guilt, attended a river baptism led by Preacher Whiting, to be reborn as a new man and be absolved of his past actions. At the last second, Booker rejected his baptism, thinking that his sins could not be washed away by a dunk in the river. In January 1892, Booker became an employee of the Pinkerton's National Detective Agency. While working as a Pinkerton, Booker garnered a reputation for ending labor strikes using extreme violence. Around this time, he married a woman named Annabelle Watson, who became pregnant shortly after. She died while giving birth to her daughter, Anna. This sent him into a depression. He turned to alcohol and gambling, which drove him into debt. In 1912, during a stormy and dark day, Booker DeWitt traveled by rowboat with a man and a woman cloaked in yellow raincoats, who leave him on the dock before rowing back to the coast. The lighthouse located near Portland and off the coast of Maine. The structure has 3 floors, each of them decorated with needlepoint quotes from Comstock, as well as several crates and pieces of furniture. Comstock was the ultra-nationalist, nativist political party that founded the floating city of Columbia. The second floor featured a desk and a phone with no tonality, as well as a map of Columbia's path around the United States, a list of schedules for departures and returns related to each relay station across the country. Pinned on the map is a written note signed with Comstock's initials, warning of someone's arrival and ordering the man in post to stop him. Several bloodstains and an overthrown library led to the 3rd floor, where the lighthouse keeper is found tied to a chair with a sack drawn over his head, and dead by a gunshot wound to the head. Various tools around suggest the man had been tortured before the arrival of DeWitt. A smoldering cigarette in a nearby ashtray would indicate that whoever killed the lighthouse keeper had left only a very short time before DeWitt's arrival. The lens room at the top of the lighthouse is locked by a gate with a 3-bell security system. The 3 bells are inscribed with the scroll, the key, and the sword. To open the gate, Booker needs to ring the scroll bell once and the other 2 bells twice each, as indicated on the card which was given to him upon his arrival by the man and woman, alongside a gun and a map of Columbia. The lighthouse then sends out a series of lights and tones, and receives tones back from the city above the clouds. This indicates to Columbia the coming of a relay vessel. The gate unlocks and a red chair is exposed to Booker, which after he sits down and straps himself, flips upside down to reveal concealed rocket booster nozzles on the last floor of the tower. The chair turns back around, and the now assembled pod launches into the sky to Columbia. Chapter 2. The Town Center. Excuse me, where am I? Heaven, my friend, or as close as we'll see till the day of judgment. From this point, his mission starts. Find Monument Tower and get the girl to wipe away his debt. After activating the rocket in the lighthouse, Booker DeWitt is launched high into the air to Columbia, where the vehicle lands at the top of the town center, also known as the Welcome Center. The Welcome Center serves both as an entry point to the city for the pilgrims from the earth below, but also as a temple to the followers of Comstock's faith. This place of worship is adorned with statues and stained glass windows depicting the Prophet, the Lamb of Columbia, and the First Lady of Columbia, Lady Comstock. The Welcome Center's alcoves are filled with hundreds of lit prayers candles and offertory gifts, including a number of silver eagles. The floors on both the upper and lower levels are immersed in shallow, slowly flowing water. Visitors descend into the main chamber, where Colombian citizens pray and listen to the facility's overseer, Preacher Whiting. New citizens are required to be baptized before being allowed to enter further. Booker allows Whiting to baptize him so that he may enter the city, but Whiting submerges him too long, causing him to black out and awaken sometime later in the Garden of Eden. The Garden of Eden, located outside the Welcome Center, is another place of praying and serenity, where the new pilgrims, after accepting baptism from Preacher Whiting, arrive. Decorated with rose bushes, reflecting pools, and angel statuary, the garden is a beautiful, tranquil area and a popular spot for group prayers amongst the faithful. The courtyard is dominated by 3 impressive statues of Columbia's founding fathers, George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, and Thomas Jefferson, each holding their appointed symbol, a sword, a key, and a scroll, respectively representing strength, industry, and law. Not caring for the religious fervor, Booker heads out in search of his target. Booker emerges just as the floating structure of the Welcome Center is docking with its designated receiving point, New Eden Square. The square is a lively area which connects to many different shops and stores, such as Hudson's Fine Clothing, Kurt's Groceries and Meats, Chaz A. White's Supply, a grocery, and many others. The place was specifically created to welcome the new inhabitants of Columbia and share with them their vision of heaven on earth. At the center of the square is a monument of the prophet, Father Comstock, branding a sword. When Booker arrives on July 6, 1912, the city is celebrating the annual Columbia Raffle and Fair, dedicated to the secession with the United States government, and a few other marvels are unraveled under Booker's eyes. The skylines transporting cargo across town, an automated stallion, a series of parade floats recounting the tale of Comstock, and a barbershop quartet singing the music of tomorrow on a floating gondola, a type of particle lift craft that transports civilian passengers around Columbia. Eventually, Booker spots Monument Island, his destination, and receives a telegram from someone named Lotus warning him of events to come. The direct route to the island is blocked, the area closed while fireworks are set up, so Booker detours through the fairgrounds. In honor of the annual fair, the local is celebrating the technological marvels Columbia has to offer, such as the skylines, Easter and Sons premium automated stallion, voxophones, and even a handyman. In addition to the fair food, high striker game, clown, and bluegrass band, several stands are set up to entertain the masses with vigors, which are wondrous tonics of Columbia, granting extraordinary abilities to its user after consumption. Most, if not all, of those creations are products of Fink Manufacturing, whose chief executive and owner, Jeremiah Fink, is hosting the raffle this year and has spent a lot of money to advertise his products and offer free samples. Other booths have shooting galleries with the Vox Populi as their targets. The Vox are a militant underground insurgency group led primarily by revolutionary Daisy Fitzroy. They are in open conflict with Zachary Hale Comstock and the founders. Up ahead, the gates to the Path of the Scroll and the raffle are closed. All tickets sold out. Fortunately, a possession hawker offers Booker a free sample, a vigor which grants the ability to control machinery and turn foes into allies, permitting him to take over the admission machine and advance. Before he can progress, a gentleman and a lady have him flip a coin and note the result on a board. The Path of the Scroll leads directly to Raffle Square, from which the celebration can be heard. Jeremiah Fink is entertaining his public before the ceremony starts and sings with them "Goodnight, Irene." Walking along the street, Booker passes a pair of policemen, one demonstrating the new skyhook, and a truly peculiar sight as a statue seemed to reshape itself before his eyes from a man to a woman, dedicated to one R. Lotus, one of the creators of the floating city. Most disconcerting of all, Booker spies a poster noting that the false shepherd of Columbia's identifying mark is exactly the same as the one on his right hand, with the letter AD still on it. Booker has to pass through the park in order to reach Monument Island. Proceeding onward, Booker enters Raffle Square within the Raffle Park. The crowd are blocking the other side of the park, and after being called out by one of the raffle's staff, he enters into the lottery and picks up a baseball. The lucky number 77 on it wins him the raffle, earning the first prize. The prize of throwing the baseball at an interracial couple, revealing the annual raffle as nothing more than a public stoning. Booker decides to throw the ball at the raffle's host, Jeremiah Fink. As he was getting ready to do so, the authorities noticed the brand on his hand. While the police attempted to maim Booker with a skyhook, he manages to kill his malefactors with the tool and escape. However, the floating bridge to the gate of Monument Island flies away, forcing him to go back to the entrance of the square and fight reinforcements. Following signs, Booker takes the scenic route to Monument Island through Shady Lane. Booker keeps dodging the attacks of the Colombian police and resupplies himself in the open stores around the street. However, as he moves ahead, he is suddenly attacked by a fireman, a heavy-hitter enemy. Firemen are trapped inside Iron Maiden-like devices that are consistently burning them for their wrongdoings in life. They use the Devil's Kiss vigor in combat, allowing them to attack with the fire that surrounds them. Once Booker defeats him, the fireman drops the vigor Devil's Kiss. It allows the user to manipulate and generate fire. Casting the vigor throws a projectile which can rebound on scenery and upon impact with an enemy or after a set time will explode and deal heavy damage to nearby enemies. Booker defeats a final round of policemen before getting a much-deserved respite. Unfortunately, the gondola docking station to Monument Island at the end of Shady Lane is already gone. The Blue Ribbon restaurant nearby is open and backs up to a series of buildings leading towards the island. Booker now has no other choice but to cut through the rooftops of Comstock Center to reach his destination. Chapter 3: Comstock Center Rooftops. The Comstock Center, much like the adjoining town center, makes up the central region of the floating city of Columbia. The local population is composed of middle and upper middle-class citizens. The district is pleasantly decorated and landscaped and contains a mix of both residential and commercial properties. The area also is the center of a variety of opinions. Some residents advocate for doctrines of racial egalitarianism, while others choose more regressive thinking. For the moment, Booker has a brief respite from action as he cuts through the Blue Ribbon restaurant, collecting valuable supplies from the bistro's coat check station, private wine room, spacious dining room, and adjacent kitchen. The restaurant is deserted save for a dead-drunk patron at the bar and the enigmatic gentleman and lady from before. Booker questions why the pair seems to be pursuing him, though they correctly point out that they were at the eatery first. The woman offers him the untested shield upgrade, which adds a defensive magnetic repulsive field around the user. Booker progresses through the cafe's kitchen and dry storage to its loading dock, just as a gunship flies by spreading word of the event that occurred at the raffle. Booker emerges around the back of the business. He must continue on towards the tower, but there's nowhere else to go except across the other buildings and rooftops in the vicinity. Fortunately, there are a number of freight hooks to leap up using the skyhook. Landing back on solid ground, Booker takes out a police officer and gains the machine gun while engaging with several other squadrons as he traverses an extended rooftop area, taking cover amongst the chimneys, generators, and other outcroppings. He battles the armed forces and the gun automations attached to their gondolas. Booker makes his way over to the building housing the Lansdowne residence. The three-story home, which consists of a master bedroom, children's room, and bathroom, can be entered through the balcony by shooting the skylights. The top floor serves as the master bedroom, which is adorned with a bed, bookshelves, a fireplace, a vanity mirror, a sitting area, a grandfather clock, and cabinet. In the center of the room is a circular table with a bottle of the Devil Kisses Vigor and a purse. The balcony overlooks a building with a freight hook and the Montgomery residence, and contains a patio set with a bottle of wine. A doorway leads to the rest of the apartment via the stairway. The middle floor houses the apartment's bathroom and an additional bedroom. The bathroom has no much of interest except the usual utilities and a weight produced by Fink Industries. The second sleeping area appears to be a child's bedroom. Various toys can be found in the room, including a songbird plush. The wallpaper is Art Nouveau inspired, and decorative stars and an airship model hang from the ceiling. The nightstand has a wallet and a shelf containing machine gun ammo. Along the bed and the shelves, the room also contains a gramophone and locked chest, which contains an infusion, a small medical kit, and a vial of salts. The bottom floor appears to be a study, with bookshelves, a desk, a large table, and another fireplace. A male citizen can be found here, who insists that he is philosophically a progressive and not like the majority of Colombians' upper class. From that building, Booker sky jumps across the patio to the Montgomery residence. The balcony is fairly large and veranda-like, with a vast amount of outdoor plantation to compensate for not having a lawn. The balcony also has an outdoor seating area with 3 parasolid tables and a service counter. The residence mailbox is set by the doors to the kitchen. The Colombian flag and banners hang outside the entrance, likely to cover what is inside when Booker enters the kitchen. He overhears an argument about the Vox Populi. The woman pities the oppressed black citizens, while the man insists that violence cannot be the right answer. The kitchen is pretty standard with a stock of pantry. A poster for the Columbia Friends of the African American Society hangs on the wall. Booker enters the dining room and is spotted by the couple standing in the living room. They note who he is, as the police knocks on the door in need of their assistance. The couple decide to assist Booker instead and pretend that no one is home. If Booker shoots, the police will come running in. But if he stays idle, he is not discovered and may pass through the apartment undisturbed. The dining room, as well as the living room, has been converted into a printing facility for the Colombian Friends of the African American Society, with the previously set furniture stacked to the side, now replaced by 3 printing machines, Posters for the cause crates and clear paper stacks are set throughout the area, as well as a trailer for transportation. In between the bookshelves is a hallway leading to the bedroom, toilet, and study. While the toilet is small and not a noteworthy location except for containing a medical kit, the same cannot be said for the bedroom. The bedroom has been converted into sleeping quarters for the less fortunate black citizens of the city. While the room is quite small, it still housed 5 beds, as well as a square outside. 2 citizens are resting as Booker walks in, and another medical kit sits on the floor. A painting of Abraham Lincoln hangs on the wall. The apartment study is in its normal state, probably as a facade for any founder-allied visitor. A small reading area is set in front of the lit fireplace, and a drawer with some silver eagles on it leans against the wall. The desk contains 2 posters for the cause as well as the usual utilities, is overlooked by another Abraham Lincoln painting. A chair set by another exit holds a machine gun and a bottle of Devil's Kiss, as protection from potential intruders. From here, Booker may enter Constitution Square and continues his journey. Booker fights a large group of agents, another turret, and a fireman. He ends up in a picnic area where acclaimed game hunter Preston E. Dawn's Wild West show is set up. At the other end of the plaza is the forbidden edifice of the Fraternal Order of the Raven. The Fraternal Order of the Raven is a founders-affiliated organization in Colombia concerned with maintaining the city's racial purity. The order was founded by citizens known only as the First Zealot, worshippers of the deceased Lady Comstock. They honor the symbols of the sword, the raven, and the coffin in her name, as contrast to the sword, the key, and the scroll, the holy symbols of Colombia. Their emblem is that of a stylized eye with 5 swords crossing behind it, and a banner which reads incorrectly in Latin, Audimus Patria Nostra Defendre, which probably intended to mean, we dare to defend our homeland. Probably rendered it would be Audimus Patriam Nostrum Defender. The group glorifies John Wilkes Booth as a saint for assassinating Abraham Lincoln, the apostate or the emancipator, a term Zachary Hare Comstock often uses in reference to the same, whom they view as wicked for abolishing slavery. Members of the order cloak themselves in hood and robes, reminiscent of the real-life Ku Klux Klan, with lesser members wearing indigo and leaders wearing black. The order believes that Colombia's racist ideals make it and its citizens superior to the rest of the world, and they seek to enforce a doctrine of racial purity. This towering black building is the private lodge of the Fraternal Order of the Raven, a reclusive brotherhood devoted to racial segregation and subjugation. The courtyard has a statue of Comstock fighting the Serpent of Nations, depicted as a Hydra-like creature with gross characters of a Jewish, black, and Asian man for its 3 heads. The building's interior is squalid, with debris littering the floor, lights dim and continually flickering, and raving guano scattered throughout. Platters of rotten food are ubiquitous, especially in the dining hall, and attract many flies and ravens. There is a statue of John Wilkes Booth in the foyer, a lounge, and a bar which contains a painting of Booth in golden glow, assassinating a devil-horned Lincoln at Ford's Theater. A reading room and large ceremony hall, the place is a mess with garbage strewn, flies buzz about the rotten food, and ravens defecate all over the furniture. The lower floors consist of a dining hall, bar, grand meeting hall, and library through which Booker must battle clusters of bigoted members of the order. Booker's journey through the club continues as he takes an elevator to the upper floors. In a large rotunda, the order conducts research, studying phrenology and pseudosciences. Hidden behind a bookcase is a holding cell for prisoners. Further ahead is the organization's torture chamber, where a prisoner is seen picked to death by ravens, in which Booker encounters the Zealot of the Lady. Succeeding in the battle earns Booker the Murder of Crows vigor, a vigor that gives control over groups of crows. Casting the vigor sends out a swarm, or murder, hence the name, of crows that will attack all enemies in front of the user, momentarily distracting them and dealing continuous minor damage. Booker defeats a final group of adversaries to leave the premises. Exiting the Fraternal Order of the Raven building, Booker can proceed directly to the gateway of Monument Island, but decides to deviate to the building on the right, with the Ralston Patent Firearms Manufacturer Corporation advertisement is on it. There is little of value inside the residence. On the lower floor, a woman is giving an eyewitness testimony describing the false shepherd's face to the police sketch artist, while another officer speaks with a male citizen. Approaching them will cause the men to attack, though the woman is unharmed. Moving on the station, Booker makes quick work of the two guards before entering the depot and proceeds to Monument Island Gateway, which leads to the Monument Island. Initially, a gondola was able to ferry passengers from the gateway directly to Monument Island to pay homage at the home of the Miracle Child. However, by the time of Booker's arrival in 1912, the gateway had been closed for some time. Various businesses located here were cut off from tourism traffic and funded or set up shops elsewhere. Citizens speculated on the reason for the closure, ranging from bad weather, disease, or supernatural haunting, ultimately putting their trust in the prophet's judgment. The faithful took comfort in viewing the tower peeking out from the clouds in the distance, which had the added effect of making the Miracle Child seem more celestial and mysterious. Workers were still able to use the more cautious skyline route to send cargo or travel to perform maintenance at the Monument Island. But after several strange incidents, the entire site was deemed unsafe to enter. Having just come from the darkened Fraternal Order of the Raven in Comstock Center Rooftops, Booker enters the sunlight and heads towards the Monument Island Gateway. However, the gondola has long since been closed to the public, and he finds the area heavily fortified by the Columbia Police and a gun automation in response to the events from the raffle. The ticketing offices have some valuable materials to uncover. Exiting the station reveals more vending machines in an alcove while leading to the gondola dock. Advancing outside toward the gondola dock, Booker is informed by the automated arrival that the gondola to Monument Island has been shut down until further notice, but that workmen can proceed using the skyline. Booker recalls the police using the skyline to travel back to the raffle and figures it's worth a shot. Booker leaps into the skyline to a Monument Tower maintenance depot. The lower platform features a telescope with a guard room containing several bottles of beer and silver eagles along with an infusion on the desk. Hopping into the skyline again leads to the upper maintenance platform. Freight cars are blocking the path, but can be cleared using the skyline control, and he can go to the abandoned island. The skyline route is blocked by some stationary cargo containers. Booker slows to a stop just as a unit of founders pull up on a hovercraft to patrol the abandoned floating island that consists of Harper's family drug house, a cigar shop, a hotel, and another building, while the agents discuss the Vox Populi. Booker swings down and attacks. When the ones on the ground are taken out, some emerge on the hotel balcony. On the balcony, Booker can either take the line directly or cut through the ransacked room, which contains some supplies, including a random piece of gear. The only way forward to Monument Island is the skyline above, but Booker needs to search a higher point to access it. So he heads towards the adjacent clock tower as officers shoot at him. Zachary Hill Comstock suddenly orders his forces to stand down over a PA system, and they kneel to pray. Booker enters the tower and rides a rift to the top unopposed. As he does, Comstock addresses him from a giant monitor attached to a security zeppelin, revealing that he knows who Booker is and his mission before warning him to leave. Booker mysteriously gets a nosebleed after the speech. Booker heads towards the rooftop access to the skyline, but the zeppelin sidesweeps the building. He boards the vessel, wipes out the armed guards, and enters the bridge to steer the airship to Monument Island. The control room is empty, but there is a female pilgrim in white robes praying at a candlelit shrine. Booker calms her, stating he won't hurt her, and takes the helm. Comstock suddenly appears aboard a fast-moving gondola, says a brief prayer, and flies off, at which point the woman emulates herself and sets the dirigible ablaze, forcing Booker to jump ship onto the skyline below amidst burning debris. The skyline below leads to the abandoned entrance to Monument Island. The doors are flanked by 2 vending machines, but the place is eerily silent without any further pursuers. Signs hint at a long time quarantine against the dangers within, but Booker presses on. Chapter 4: Monument Island. As the Zeppelin explodes, Booker reaches the skyline and lands at the Monument Island station as the ship falls out of the sky. He then ascends to enter Monument Island itself. Booker crosses the courtyard, hops the fence via a freight hook, and enters the facility of Monument Tower. Placards warn visitors not to touch or approach the specimen and indicate that the site is under the control of the Columbia Science Authority. But the area seems abandoned and has an uneasy quietness about it. Built by the architects under the leadership of Zachary Hale Comstock, Monument Tower serves as the iconic center of Columbia and the location that new immigrants to the city would have to pass through when entering Columbia. The tower's function was changed to have a religious purpose shortly after construction. According to the Gospel of Columbia, God delivered Comstock a female heir after a miraculous 7-day pregnancy by Lady Comstock. The child would be raised in Monument Tower until she would eventually succeed Comstock as ruler of Columbia. Originally built as a centerpiece for the World's Columbian Exposition in 1893, the tower's purpose changed when Comstock brought the infant Elizabeth to Columbia. Lady Comstock was enraged and accused him of infidelity and refused to let the child be raised on her own. Comstock moved Elizabeth to the tower where it served as a gilded cage, protecting her from harm, as well as a way to control and shape her to become Columbia's next ruler. When Elizabeth's powers manifested, the lower part of the tower was converted into a research facility run by Rosalind and Robert Lotus and the Columbia Science Authority. The upper portion became the specimen's observation area where Elizabeth would be observed on a daily basis. As Elizabeth's power grew across the Monument Tower, and actually the whole of Monument Tower became restricted to only those allowed by Comstock. Due to Elizabeth's growing power, a massive device known as the siphon was built in the lower part of the tower to dampen her strength. This proved to be of limited success, as Elizabeth's powers continued to build and could not be contained. This necessitated parts of Monument Tower being temporarily evacuated. Eventually, all of Monument Island would be abandoned for days and even weeks at a time until the danger had passed. As Booker passed through the check-in rotunda and arrived in a research area, the signs indicated longer and longer quarantine periods, from 12 to 72 to 168 hours. An abandoned locker featured a voxophone, a gas mask, and 2 pin-ups belonging to Ty Bradley, an employee uneasy about the dangers of the area. The lobby is littered with unused posters advertising Monument Island and a hastily painted quarantine line. At the end of the hall is a diagram charting the specimen's growth, while further along, a large piece of high-voltage equipment marked siphon demonstrated on 3 objects, or transposes. Age 4, companion, teddy bear. Age 11, poetry book. Age 13, manarch. Further along are a series of rooms. A projection room and photo lab reveal that the scientists have been spying on the girl for years. The dark room displays photos taken on the girl, even in instances where she is dressing up. The projector in the screening room shows clips of certain activities, such as painting, dancing, singing, lockpicking, and cracking the Vox cipher. In an adjoining operating room, Booker finds collections of blood, hair, and nail clippings. Booker continues into a room with a massive siphon that seems to be drawing in and materializing an immense amount of energy, while emitting distorted sounds of Elizabeth's humming. Everybody wants to rule the world. The blackboard in the room indicates that the facility is too hazardous for research to continue. Ignoring the warning signs, Booker boards an elevator and heads up. Booker passes through a series of observation rooms where the scientists at the center security spied on Elizabeth through one-way mirrors in her bedroom, conservatory, bathroom, dressing room, dining room, and library. Through these mirrors, Booker finally spots his target and gets a troubling demonstration of her powers. Booker finds Elizabeth in the library. Elizabeth is a 19 to 20-year-old woman who has been imprisoned in the flying city of Columbia since she was an infant. The only way forward is the exit on the very side of the statue and climb towards the head. Booker re-enters only to come crashing into the library. Elizabeth is understandably terrified at the presence of this unknown intruder, but then intrigued. The whistler in a statue announces that two have company, and Elizabeth insists that Booker leave. He offers her the key to the tower, and they both flee. While running, Elizabeth is horrified as she sees the observation room and realizes that she has been secretly watched. Before explanation can be given, Booker has his first encounter with Songbird, a creature or construct of undetermined origins that is feared by the citizens of Columbia, and is Elizabeth's guardian and keeper. As the creature tears the structure apart, trying to get at the pair, the two escape the top of the statue before being flung off. An intense ride on the skyline ensues as Songbird darts through the air. Suddenly, the monument collapses and a large part of it breaks the skyline apart. Booker and Elizabeth tumble through the air before landing in the waters of Battleship Bay. Songbird tries to follow Booker underwater, suffering a crack in his glass-covered eye. Chapter 5: Battleship Bay. Battleship Bay is a popular beach area of the Soldier Fields district of Columbia. The bay is home to shops, an arcade, live music, and an expensive beach. It features real sand as well as what appears to be a simulated ocean. Seagulls are seen hanging around the beach. After being pulled from the water by Elizabeth and recovering his strength, Booker sees an advertisement for the First Lady airship and decides to hijack it to leave Columbia. While tickets are requested for the First Lady aerodrome, they are attacked by founders attempting to detain Elizabeth. Booker eliminates the group and makes his way to Soldier Fields with Elizabeth. Soldiers Field was conceived and designed by Zachary Hale Comstock in 1903, years after the death of Lady Comstock and the beginning of the rise of the Vox Populi. Comstock wanted to indoctrinate the young children of Columbia with military and national service to the founders' ideals and cause. This involved the characters Dimwit and Duke, Boy Scouts who represent both the ideal and non-ideal Columbian child. Propaganda also included xenophobic and racist cartoons. The park was built with many attractions and stores such as Battleship Bay Arcade, Dimwit and Duke Ice Cream Shop, Founders Books, Toy Soldiers, Patriots Pride, First Lady's Aerodrome, and the Hall of Heroes, all of which were designed as propaganda to impress the need for Columbians' military service upon the children. The Hall of Heroes, however, attracted controversy from those who were present at the events it depicted, namely Cornelius Slate, who was present at the Battle of Wounded Knee and the Boxers' Rebellion. The Hall of Heroes glorifies Comstock and promotes the idea that he was the hero of the Battle of Wounded Knee and Boxers' Rebellion. Slate, who had been present in both battles, accused Comstock of lying about his role, unaware of Comstock's former life. Comstock subsequently stripped Slate of his rank, who was then forced into Finkton as a laborer. Due to his attitude and predicament, Slate soon joined the Vox Populi. While in Finkton, Slate also uncovered the personal diary of Lady Comstock, one that revealed the truth of Elizabeth's conception, proving that the First Lady's memorial in the Hall of Heroes to be a lie as well. By July of 1912, the Vox Populi was growing. Slate's personal goals led him to escape Finkton and lead some Vox and fellow disenfranchised veterans to occupy the Hall of Heroes and desecrate it. Vandalizing its exhibits, Slate renamed it the Hall of Whores, but remained unaware of the founders planning to strike back. While this section of Soldiers Field was closed, the rest, including Battleship Bay, the arcade, the aerodrome, and the main street of Soldiers Field, remained open to the public. When reaching Soldiers Field, Booker and Elizabeth discover that the gondola to the aerodrome requires electricity. namely the shock jockey figure. The figure is advertised to be in the Hall of Heroes, so Booker and Elizabeth make their way through Soldiers Field to the hall to obtain the figure. In the entryway of the Hall of Heroes, set in a rotunda, stands a circular monument detailing the timeline of events important to the history of Columbia. Such events include the museum's 2 exhibit battles, the launch of Columbia, the murder of Lady Comstock, and the birth of the Lamb. The Boxer Rebellion exhibit displays snowy mountain scenery among the city of Beijing, lined with cutout characters of Chinese boxers. The Chinese are portrayed with yellow skin and squinting eyes, along with sharp claw-like fingernails and an evil attack gesture. Midway through the exhibit stands a statue of a boxer soldier decapitating an American woman. The exhibit ends in a large room with a statue of Zachary Comstock, draped in the American flag, laying down and aiming a hand cannon while surrounded by hordes of boxer soldiers. Amidst the boxer soldier is a pagoda set on a hilltop. In the background stands a mural of Columbia, both as a city and the Archangel. The Battle of Wounded Knee exhibit displays cut-out characters of violent Native American murdering American soldiers. The Native Americans are portrayed with dark red skin and bloody marks on their faces, in an attacking position with either a tomahawk or bow and arrow. Bright lights and recorded Indian chants are present throughout the area. Near the middle of the exhibit, a statue shows 2 Native Americans holding a woman hostage while aiming a tomahawk at her. Another statue shows a Native American holding her scalp while the woman lays on the floor. The exhibit ends in a tribal field with a statue of Comstock, holding his bird's eye while surrounded by a horde of Native Americans on horseback with bows drawn. In the background is an image of George Washington dressed in a toga, holding a sword. This is where they are forced to confront Cornelius Slate. The 2 fight their way through the exhibit of the Battle of Wounded Knee and Boxers' Rebellion, giving Slate's men an honorable death and discovering the myth Comstock created for himself. Booker and Elizabeth then make their way through the First Lady's Memorial, the largest exhibit in the Heroes, discovering the birth of the seed of the Prophet and the death of Lady Comstock. It contains 4 rooms. The first room, the Memorial of Our Lady, contains a large portrait of Lady Comstock and a statue called the Lady and Child, depicting Lady Comstock holding an infant Elizabeth on a chariot. The second room, the Transport of the Child, depicts a statue of Zachary Comstock carrying the infant child to the tower of Monument Island in order to protect her from Daisy Fitzroy following the death of Lady Comstock. The third room, the Murder of Our Lady, depicts the circumstances of Lady Comstock's death, in which a statue of a praying Lady Comstock remained ignorant of a brooding Daisy Fitzroy, the alleged murderer of Lady Comstock, awaiting behind a hallway, preparing to strangle her mistress with a red knot. The final room, the Vengeance of the Prophet, depicts a battle between Zachary Comstock and Daisy Fitzroy. Comstock chases Fitzroy and her vox populi off the edge, and they all fall into the fiery pits of hell. In this memorial, they discover that Elizabeth is Comstock's daughter, and is intended to follow in his footsteps. Elizabeth manages to slip through the bars of the locked gate, and Booker is too broad to fit through. Fortunately though, a fright hook brought in through a tear allows Booker to jump over the gate. The courtyard is a wide open space with a balcony above it. The staircase on both sides have been demolished, cutting off access to that part of the balcony. Below are 2 doors powered by Shock Jockey, a vigor that has the power to manipulate electricity in the form of charged crystals. Casting the vigor will shock a single target, temporarily stunning them and doubling their damage intake, while charging the vigor will instead throw a cluster of purple crystals across the target area. One leads to a storage room, while the other is a hallway leading back to the Vengeance of Comstock's room. At the top of the balcony is another door leading into a small hallway. After Booker dispatches the rogue soldiers and gun automation in the courtyard, he then proceeds down the hall leading to the gift shop. The Hall of Heroes Memorial Gift Shop at the very end of the museum has souvenirs for the guests. 4 glass cases containing motorized patriots in Comstock's likeness line up near the entrance. In the center of the room is a cashier's counter, with souvenirs for the Wounded Knee Massacre and Boxers' Rebellion to the right and left. A motorized Patriot with George Washington's likeness escapes from a fifth glass case and starts firing at Booker with a peppermill crank gun. After Booker defeats the Clockwork Terminator, he and Elizabeth investigate a locked door to one side of the room. After unlocking the door, Booker opens the crate to find it's been emptied. Then Elizabeth notices footprints leading from the room back to the way they had come. They see clusters of shock jockey crystals that weren't there before, which shocked Booker if he stepped on it or between them. Upon entering the courtyard, the two take notice of the gunship and realize that Comstock's troop have come to clear out Cornelius Slade's men. Then, Slade himself appears and throws down a batch of shock jockey traps, all the while taunting Booker and ranting about how Comstock had taken away his past. The remainder of Slade's soldiers throw themselves at Booker in a suicidal frenzy. Booker takes them out, along with a fireman and another motorized Patriot. When Booker enters the long hallway at one end of the courtyard, Slade throws one final cluster of traps as a few more soldiers rush at him. After a brief battle, Booker finds Slade crumbled on the ground in the vengeance of Comstock's room. As Booker reaches for the vigor, Slade stops him and demands that Booker end his life. After Booker makes his decision, he picks up the bottle of shock jockey and drinks from it, gaining its powers. Booker and Elizabeth start heading back towards the entrance, facing off the last fragment of Slade's troops, including a crow. When they reach the entrance, Booker uses the newly acquired shock jockey to power the conduit and open the gate that had sealed behind them before. They reach the First Lady's aerodrome and set off to the First Lady. Everything looked like smooth sailing until Elizabeth realized that the airship's destination was not Paris as she had hoped, but New York. When Booker moved to console the upset girl, she knocked him out with a nearby wrench. Chapter 6. Finkton Docks. Finkton Docks serves as the gateway to the rest of Finkton, particularly the Plaza of Zeal. Finkton Docks, for short, are a sub-district of Finkton, where airship docks and cargo is disposed. It acts as a port where raw materials are brought in and the products made by Fink Manufacturing are shipped out to parts of Colombia by cargo barges. While on the floor, Booker fades in and out of consciousness, amidst the sound of spirituals. He witnesses Elizabeth attempting to navigate the controls, Vox Populi gondolas flying up alongside the ship, Elizabeth departing the craft, and the Vox overtaking the First Lady. When he comes into conscious, Booker meets Daisy Fitzroy, the leader of the Vox Populi. Booker demands the dirigible be returned to him. Daisy delivers an ultimatum. Find the gunsmith loyal to the Vox cause in Finkton and get needed guns and ammo to the Vox Populi in exchange for the aircraft. Booker is then dropped out of the ship. He lands in Beggar's Wharf, a large port located in the Finkton Docks. It is adorned with a large color image of Finkton and projectors displaying Finkton propaganda. It is used as a cargo depot and a warehouse. And he sets out to find Elizabeth, regain the Zeppelin, and complete his mission. Fink Manufacturing propaganda can be seen via speakers and screens. While workers scrub the floors and crates, Finkton Docks serves as a gateway to the rest of Finkton, particularly the Plaza of Zeal. The central hub is the busiest part of Finkton Manufacturing as it connects most of the main areas of the workhouse together. The area is tightly controlled as employees go about their job. Low-class workers perform repetitive manual labor, such as assembling crates and scrubbing floors, vending machines and crafts, in an automated fashion to the beat of a plodding musical score played over the public address system. Menacing foremen oversees their work while clerks go over figures on their clipboards. Police officers march up and down the docks. All the while, Jeremiah Fink's elitist propaganda plays over the loudspeaker, accompanied by images projected via mosquitoes. flying automations that appear as both enemies and potential allies depending on the situation, as well as flying projectors for advertising. Further along the dock, there is a couple of opportunities to get into a fight with the local force if Booker steps on one of the barges or take the silver eagles and silver bar from the safe in the building marked Employees Only. Further along, Booker passes a series of containers that fell from the cargo barge. He pries open the doors to the warehouse just in time to see Elizabeth being thrown off a barge. He chases after her, but she opens a series of harmless tears exposing a reality where the wall is an open archway. 2 soldiers spot her and take her away so she can be returned to Zachary and Comstock, causing Elizabeth to lose focus and choose the tear before Booker can follow, which impede his pursuit. She runs into Fort Franklin, a military outpost of Columbia Authority located in Finkton, Columbia. It consists of a single tower-like structure connected to the Finkton docks and flanked by massive golden statues of Columbia's soldiers. Booker heads out to the pier and hears the sound of Elizabeth struggling with her captors, as the soldiers of the fort place Elizabeth in an elevator to take her to the holding cells and summon a handyman to transport her to Comstock. The handyman is a half-man, half-machine, heavy-hitter enemy, created to help disabled, sickly or severely injured citizens of Columbia to not only be able-bodied, but to regain their vitality and technically live forever. However, the procedure came at the price of having to live with a large and highly disproportionate body and many unattended side effects. At the Columbian annual raffle and fair, a handyman is on display and appears fearful and distressed by the gawking crowd. Combat quotes from handymen suggest that some live in great pain and cannot sleep, showing that the autobody doesn't work as effectively as advertised, or even that they were forced into the autobody against their will. The sadness of living while enseized in a machine, as well as the intense physical pain that is experienced by many due to this process, often leads to outbreaks of psychotic rage, during which they are inconsolable and will harm anything and everything that represents a threat to them. Booker arrives and eliminates them with several waves of reinforcements. The main floor of the fort is an open-air platform, heaped with piles of contraband seized from accused Vox Populi sympathizers, along with a pair of stocks that each hold a prisoner. There is a jail cell on the lower level which houses a pair of prisoners and an infusion. An elevator and a closed-loop skyline provide access to the second level of the fort, which includes an office area and holding cell for other prisoners, as well as a dollar bill and Veni Vidi Viga machine. After Booker opens the elevator, Elizabeth creates a tear that pulls a new skyline into existence and flees. Booker follows her but runs into a handyman, who picks him up and tosses him from the fort like a ragdoll. Booker plummets through the air, but Elizabeth summons a zeppelin, saving him from certain death. After tense negotiation, the two rejoin on the docks in front of the Worker Induction Center, the primary area where workers seek employment at Finkton. But Elizabeth still doesn't fully trust Booker. Elizabeth is still angry and distrustful of Booker, but realizes he is her only hope of escaping Columbia. First, the pair must supply the Vox Populi with weapons to regain their means of travel. A gondola docked at the pier is locked. It requires 5 lockpicks. There is a telescope beside the vehicle. Along the dock, worker-class citizens mile about, while the police officers look on with contempt, and a mosquito patrols the skies. Some of those waiting say goodbye to their loved ones or lament their desperate situation as they prepare to look for work in Jeremiah Fink's workhouse. Booker and Elizabeth enter Finkton proper. The induction center consists of an upper level where potential employees submit their paperwork and learn of potential openings in the workhouse. When the doer arrives, they spot a poster advertising Shen Lin, who came to Columbia and set up his gunsmith shop in the Plaza of Zurich in 1905, where he met and married his wife May. Through his hard work, he made a name for himself as an excellent gunsmith. As a Chinese man living in Columbia, he felt the prejudice of Columbia's upper-class citizens. Consequently, he began supporting the Vox Populi, secretly supplying them with weapons he created. Chen Lin is the gunsmith needed for the Vox's weapons. The admission machine announces that Fink Manufacturing is at quota and will not be hiring. Much to the dismay of the many applicants, the main elevator is blocked off by police. There's only one option: enter Finkton covertly. Booker and Elizabeth sneak over to the stairs leading down the lower level. When Elizabeth manages to open the locked doors, the police and a motorized patriot will attack. Only when the attackers are eliminated can the pair proceed to the service elevator to Finkton. In the office area by the service elevator is Cornelius Slate's locker. As Booker summons the lift, Elizabeth investigates the locker and finds Lady Comstock's diary among Slate's personal effects. Reading through the journal, she learns two shocking pieces of information. Elizabeth is not Lady Comstock's biological daughter, and as a result, she had Elizabeth put in Monument Tower out of shame. The two ride the elevator down. As they descend, Fink's personal credo plays over the speaker. The car suddenly stops, and the phone by the control panel rings. A secretary connects Booker directly to Jeremiah Fink, who seems interested in meeting Booker. The elevator continues and the two enter Finkton. As the lift passes workers, it is clear Fink rules his employees like machines. The car finally stops in the Plaza of Zeal. This central hub is the busiest part of Fink manufacturing as it connects most of the main areas of the workhouse together. Booker and Elizabeth illegally enter Finkton proper via the service elevator in the workers' induction center. Though they've done their best to maintain a low profile, they realize Jeremiah Fink himself knows about the duo's movements, as he calls him on the lift's phone. Fink is surprisingly welcoming to Booker and states that he looks forward to meeting him. As the elevator continues to descend, Booker and Elizabeth get a view of Fink's MFG's corporate culture. Golden statues dedicated to Fink Tower above factories, workers toil and squalor, and Fink propaganda extols the values of regimented labor. As the car reaches the bottom, the pair are greeted by Fink's associate, Mr. Flambeau, who offers them some useful supplies including a purse and silver eagles, a lockpick, a vial of salt, a medical kit, and the hand cannon. The two enter the Plaza of Zeal and find it to be a hive of activity. At the center is a large board marked Employment, listing various unskilled jobs: coal porter, waste collector, sewer bricker, etc., and a man auctioning them off to Fink MFG employees. The workers are in the midst of a bidding war for who can complete the job in the shortest amount of time. Failure to complete the task in the promised time results in forfeit of pay. The laborers are so desperate for work that one beats a man unconscious to take his job. The barker rewards this behavior. Small workshops and tram tracks wrap around the plaza, while workers assemble items like barrels and rivets in the open-air plaza. In the southeastern quadrant of the plaza is the clock shop. There's a lock-picking kit and a couple of silver eagles in front of it. But inside is a lockpick and Vox cipher. Elizabeth suggests searching the impound for the needed code book. Once it's found, the hidden cache contains an infusion, a locksmith bag, a voxophone, and a volley gun. Much of the plaza is closed off at first. To the left is the entrance to the factory, but it's locked up tight. To the right is the factory workers' housing dubbed Shantytown, but the path is blocked off by fallen shipping containers. At the far end of the plaza is the entrance to the Good Time Club, but it's blocked off by posted police officers, a set of gun automations, and a mosquito that circles overhead. In the sweet shop in the northwest corner is a lockpick and a time tear blasting music. Though no one knew what music is playing, it is the 1960s song Fortunate Son by Creedence Clearwater Revival. Attached to the central clock tower is Chen Lin's gunsmith shop, inside of which is a lockpick. At the top of the shop is a piece of gear that can be accessed by climbing the skyline near the entrance. Whether Booker engaged in combat with the enemies earlier or not, he and Elizabeth emerge from the gunsmith shop to find the plaza deserted. Suddenly, a handyman leaps out and attacks. Once Booker defeats the bruiser, he drops a piece of gear. Elizabeth commands Booker's skills in combat, and they head off to the Good Time Club. In a second Columbia, after Booker and Elizabeth make it to the Good Time Club, they find Shen Lin dead, murdered by his interrogators for his connections with Fitzroy. Hope seems lost, but Elizabeth finds and opens a tear to a different reality in this Columbia, a second Columbia, where Chen Lin is currently alive, and the Vox Populi and the poor are even more heavily prosecuted. The duo return to the Plaza of Seal and are immediately bested by armed forces. Soldiers attacked from all sides while a beast fires with a volley gun. Once the dust is settled, Elizabeth spots a distressing difference on the employment board. All jobs read, "Kill the false shepherd." They proceed back to the gunsmith shop. After meeting with the Lins, Booker and Elizabeth head out towards the Bullhouse impound in Shantytown. Upon returning to the plaza, they are again attacked by the flying squad. The path to Shantytown is now unblocked, and after taking out the guards, they take the elevator down to Shantytown. After a truly trying ordeal, Booker and Elizabeth are forced to pass through another tier to a version of Columbia where Chen Lin's tools are back at his shop, a third Columbia. However, they soon discover that in this Columbia, the Vox Populi have staged an uprising against Fink MFG. Aided by the Vox, Booker fights his way through the opposition as he makes his way back to the Plaza of Zeal. They pass through the Shantytown entrance to find that the plaza became a battleground between the founders and the Vox Populi. Chapter 7: Path to Shantytown. As the largest workhouse in Columbia, Fink Manufacturing requires a place for its laborers to reside when not at work. The borough designed for this purpose was named Factory Worker Housing. The entry sign has since been vandalized to read Shantytown. Individuals are paid in tokens only good at the Fink Company store, meaning all wages go directly back to Fink MFG. Employees are paid little and often cannot afford the store's high prices. Consequently, some people in Shantytown resort to eating rats to stave off hunger. Others turn to armed robbery and vandalize vending machines in order to survive. The 12-hour workdays of Fink MFG often leaves its laborers in a weakened and vulnerable state. Many are susceptible to illness, and the living conditions of Shantytown only exacerbates the problem. The inhabitants of Shantytown are the lower-class citizens of Columbia. The population is comprised of Black, Irish, Asian, and even some Anglo-Saxon citizens. Most of the white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, which make up the majority of Columbia's upper and middle classes, have never even set foot in Shantytown. Any outsiders ignorant of the area's history or even of poverty, like Elizabeth, quickly realize the reality of the workers' unfortunate situation. From the Plaza of Zeal, Booker and Elizabeth must first pass through the path to Shantytown. Previously, this area had been blocked by fallen containers, but now the way is cleared. The area is guarded by the Fink Manufacturing Housing Authority, which includes a beast with an RPG. But Elizabeth can bring in a fright hook, a gun automation, or cover to help Booker fight them off. Further up the path is an outpost for the Columbia Authority. Inside the armory is the Vigor Charge, allowing Booker to ram into enemies at high speed and deliver a powerful melee strike. But it's locked up tight and cannot be obtained presently. The two take the elevator down to reach the ward. Shantytown is shown to be an overall depressing area, filled with deteriorating and condemned buildings, and populated by sick, malnourished workers and their families. Upon entering Shantytown, a man with a copy of the People's Voice can be seen preaching to young children about the evil of their oppressors and the hope offered by Daisy Fitzroy. A pair of food distributors are over at the left. There is an infusion on the counter, but approaching them will start a fight. There are several homeless people on the right. Elizabeth approaches one man seated by a column, and he reaches out to her in desperation. A woman warming her hands with two children by a fire states that her husband lost his job and the whole family was evicted. Elizabeth expresses feelings of sorrow for the people of Shantytown, questioning why they are treated so poorly by the wealthy of Columbia. The two can explore a neighboring bar or head straight for the police station for Chen Lin's tools. In either direction, the pair witnessed the hopeless misery of the district's residents. If Booker and Elizabeth approach the nearby graveyard shift bar, two men posing as panhandlers attempt to rob them at gunpoint. As they enter the bar, they will come across a small group of citizens drowning their sorrows while the radio plays. Exploration of the bar's basement reveals a child hiding under the stairs, a voxophone, a locksmith bag, a lockpick, a set of keys, and a guitar. Booker has the option of playing the guitar, which prompts Elizabeth to sing, "Will the Circle Be Unbroken?" After leaving the bar, they pass an Irish woman who begs for help for her daughter and another woman washing clothes in water from the drainage runoff. After the heated and difficult fight in the bullyard, Booker and Elizabeth enter the building to find a discomforting quiet. The main level consists of security checkpoint gate and the main foyer. In addition to the seized Vox Populi paraphernalia, a lockpick and the kinetoscope Fitzroy spotted are in this area. Further on are the main offices and the interrogation room, and inside are a voxophone and a lockpicking kit. As the duo enter the main space, they are beset by a wave of soldiers and later by a motorized Patriot. The upper level houses the primary planning room and more offices, where a locked chest and a voxophone can be found. The armory is in the left of the floor. To the right is the facility's locker room. The basement level contains the impound where contraband is kept. Booker and Elizabeth find the needed tools. As they head down to fetch them, Elizabeth opines what giving Vox the weapons could do and how the poor could be helped by this. When they happen upon the tools, they realize that this was a fool's errand, as it would be impossible for them to lodge all the heavy machinery back. Elizabeth spots a tear that allows Booker and Elizabeth to enter an alternative reality where the confiscated weapons were never there, meaning the Vox Populi now has them. They go through the tear and head back towards the gunsmith shop. As they head out of the bullhouse, they find a voxophone and hear the sound of a fierce firefight going on outside. Heading up the stairs, they discover a few guards are phasing in and out of existence. The same effects as those in the Good Time Club prison. In addition, the way they came in is now redecorated with strips of red cloth and mines with streaks of red paint. Booker and Elizabeth return to the bullyard to find it is the scene of a massive firefight between the Vox Populi and some scattered founders who attempted to retake the facility. The Vox are on Booker's side as he and Elizabeth fight their way back through Shantytown. After Elizabeth points out Booker's picture on a poster, he recalls memoirs of fighting alongside Cornelius Slate and burning down the Hall of Heroes. During the assault on the hall, his life was lost along with Slate's, earning the two martyrdom with the Vox. Booker suffers a nosebleed, but Elizabeth manages to revive him. Elizabeth brings them to a reality in which the Vox Populi had already received the weapons and are carrying out a successful revolt. With the Vox on his side, they crush the feeble opposition, attempting to retake the bullhouse. Heading back past the stockades, Booker and Elizabeth pass a young woman joyfully singing, "Fortunate Son, the prisoner has been set free." A Vox Populi agent walking by recognizes him as Booker DeWitt, the hero of the Vox. A nearby poster proclaims Booker as the martyr of the revolution. The duo head out to find Daisy Fitzroy, regain the First Lady, and leave Columbia. As they return to the main thoroughfare, they see the Vox execute POWs. Others hang from balconies, and the Fink MFG signs being ripped from the buildings. The residents of Shantytown have all taken up arms and are being led by Daisy Fitzroy to rip Fink MFGs up from the roots. Her image is seen over the monitor of the airship as she leads the charge to destroy the factory. Back over by the graveyard shift, some Vox soldiers have their photo taken over a fallen handyman, clutching a voxophone close to his heart. Inside the bar, a couple of individuals drink to the success of the revolution while Fitzroy's propaganda plays over the radio. A voxophone recording from Booker can be found on the counter. Booker and Elizabeth ride the elevator back to Finkton proper. Booker posits that Daisy Fitzroy and Zachary Haired Comstock are more alike than different. Daisy was brought to Columbia by Jeremiah Fink, who used his contacts on the ground to procure African-American convicts for mental labor within the city. Shortly after arriving, she was employed as a housekeeper for Lady Comstock. Daisy admired Lady Comstock, believing her to be genuine for someone on such a high pedestal. She fled Comstock House after being framed for the death of Lady Comstock and formed the Vox Populi within a few weeks of her escape. Years later, she was arrested by city authorities in Finkton. Daisy was then sent to Dr. Francis Pinchot at Comstock House, who interviewed her over a period of a week. After participating in an intelligence test conducted by Dr. Pinchot, it was learned that Daisy had genius-level intelligence, scoring even higher on the test than Dr. Pinchot himself. As a result of Daisy's interviews showing unsatisfactory results, it was suggested to Dr. Pinchot by his supervisor, Dr. Kittery, that the scientists at Comstock House should perform a lobotomy on Daisy to make her more severe. Dr. Pinchot, by then fascinated by Daisy, felt that the procedure would render her useless and refused, worried that he'd have no choice if he did not show results quickly. As Daisy's lobotomy was planned, Dr. Pinchot tried to intervene. He was accused of forming a connection with Daisy and thus ignored. The night before the last of Dr. Pinchot's interview, he wrote of Daisy's plan to be broken out of the facility and how she requested his help. Dr. Pinchot handed over his keys to Daisy as well as all of the money he had on him. Despite his help, Daisy shot and killed him before escaping. As the Vox Populi grew more powerful and their ideals became increasingly extreme, Fitzroy sought to destroy the founders. When Booker and Elizabeth find their way back to the Shantytown, they find the armory has been broken into, and Booker can now obtain the charge vigor. The armed forces have appeared to try and crush the rebellion, but Booker takes them out instead. They head back to the Plaza of Zeal. They head to the gunsmith's shop, only to find Shen and Sarah Lynn lying together in a pool of blood at the shop's entrance. Elizabeth is devastated. Booker convinces her to follow him to the factory so they can reclaim the First Lady from Daisy. As they head out, a group of Vox agents cut open the locked gates to the factory and head into their antechamber. Booker and Elizabeth join the charge, leaving the Plaza of Zeal behind for the final time. Chapter 8: The Factory. Most of the production of Fink manufacturing was done inside the factory, from vigors to vending machines. During the Vox Revolution in July of 1912, Finkton was taken over by the rebels who, after assaulting the bullyard in Shantytown, went after the factory and Jeremiah Fink himself. Daisy Fitzroy was leading the operation from the First Lady. Booker DeWitt and Elizabeth have passed through a tear and entered a reality in which the Vox Populi have the needed weapons to initiate a revolt against Fink manufacturing. Booker and Elizabeth follow the assaults of the rebels with the intent of retrieving the First Lady from Daisy Fitzroy and escaping Columbia. The latter has docked itself to the top of the factory to attack it from another angle. From the Plaza of Zeal, Vox fighters tear open the gates of the factory and charge into the courtyard of the factory. They immediately encounter massive resistance from Founders soldiers, gun and rocket automata, and a motorized Patriot. Booker has to fight alongside the Vox in order to progress. Elizabeth can summon cover, rocket automation, and a crate of medical kits to aid in the battle. When finally reaching the factory's entrance, a security zeppelin mounted with an automatic barrage automation appears and bombards the area, killing many Vox Populi in the process and keeping anyone from entering the building. Using the nearby skyline to reach the zeppelin, Booker has to fight his way through the defenses and crew aboard and sabotage the engine with the skyhook. Booker then dives from the zeppelin as it falls out of the sky and uses the skyline to reach the ground safely. The Vox chant Booker's name in celebration as they unlock the gates, and Elizabeth praises his valor before they force their way inside the factory. The main hall of the building has been hit by the attacks of the Vox. Gunship commanded by the rebels blast through the windows and the fighters storm in. Together, they defeat the last defenses guarding the building. A Vox Beast fires an RPG rocket at the Fink MFG sign when the battle ends. At the base of the tower, one elevator leads to Fink's office, the other to the factory proper. There's a locksmith bag and a piece of gear in the area. Booker boards an elevator to the top while the Vox Populi celebrate the recoup. The various manufacturing floors of the factory can be seen through the elevator, showing vigors, vending machines, furniture, textiles, security automata, generators, and even toys being made. Elizabeth thinks back to Chen and Maylin's deaths and laments the role she played in it. Booker attempts to comfort her, but the lift suddenly comes to a halt. Daisy Fitzroy phones DeWitt and calls him an imposter, as Booker in the alternate universe was killed during the revolt, as a martyr to the Vox cause. His unintended presence alive is a hindrance to the cause, and Daisy sets her men against him. When the elevator stops at Fink's office, Booker and Elizabeth see a few Vox Populi rebels have slaughtered a group of founded troops and have piled them up around a blood-stained clock and ransacked the office. When they spot Booker, they immediately attack. After taking care of the aggressors, Booker can search for valuables. A schematic of Songbird, a voxophone, and a bottle of undertow can be found in the main room. Undertow gives the user the ability to attract and repel adversaries. When cast, Undertow deflects all incoming projectiles and pushes back all enemies in front of Booker DeWitt, knocking them away and throwing them to the ground if they land back down. For double the salt cost, charging Undertow pulls a target to Booker and momentarily suspends them in the air, temporarily increasing their vulnerability to damage. Fink's desk is a treasure trove, a locksmith bag, a safe containing silver eagles, a few cash bags, silver bags, and a gold bar. One of the side rooms contains a halted conveyor system for vending machines, 3 of which are stationed and functional. The side room on the opposite side is locked and inaccessible. The factory was the center of large manufactured productions in Finkton. The raw materials needed for the production of the finished products created within the factory were received and shipped via Finkton docks. The factory docks, on the other hand, was reserved for Jeremiah Fink himself, so he could arrive at his office without having to interact with his lowly workers. Other high-ranked officials and prospective investors could also use the docks to take the short walk to meet with Fink. After the Vox docked their aircraft, they cleaned the top floor and dragged Fink and his son to the docking station. As Elizabeth arrives, she observes Daisy Fitzroy shoot dead Jeremiah Fink in cold blood inside the station, before ordering her troops to kill DeWitt. A wave of enemies then arrive on the platform, including heavy hitters such as a fireman and a handyman. A skyline circles around the area and provides a good way to escape them. Once all enemies are defeated, Booker helps Elizabeth crawl inside a vent to prevent Fitzroy from killing Fink's son. Elizabeth, left without any other option, stabs Daisy in the back with scissors, who then collapses on the floor. The two then board the airship and leave Finkton, with Elizabeth traumatized by the murder she just committed. Booker tries to comfort her, but she refuses to answer. Later, she reemerges having shed her bloody torn clothes, trimmed her blood-stained hair, and changed into Lady Comstock's iconic dress. Booker sets a random course and the air takes off, only for a statue of the ship to summon Songbird. Chapter 9 Emporia. Emporia was home to the wealthiest citizens of Columbia, including its founder, Zachary Hale Comstock. Emporia seemed to contain the heart of Columbia itself, housing the city's upper class and also Comstock House, which can be seen even on the outskirts of the district. It has tall, stately buildings and towers, with narrow streets, and seemed to resemble a small floating New York. The district's main transportation hub was the massive and elegant Grand Central Depot, where people could pursue the numerous shops and restaurants within the station or in downtown Emporia, as well as board a gondola or hovercraft at Port Prosperity in other areas. Heavily damaged from an encounter with the songbird after a hidden statue aboard the ship whistles its summoning song, the First Lady crash lands on the outskirts of Prosperity Plaza. Dazed but alive in the wrecked airship, Booker comes to and sees Elizabeth attempting to open the jammed door. A familiar couple plinks out a tune on a player piano, arguing over the correct notes. Elizabeth realizes with horror that the Lotuses are attempting the same tune played by the statue, which inevitably calls the songbird. Once Booker helps her with the door, she leaps out just as the call song is completed. Upset, she nervously scans the skies for the songbird. However, the couple remarked matter-of-factly, "The songbird defense system. The notes were correct, the instrument was not. One needs both to get his attention, but if you know how to sing to him, he will take you where you need to go." Satisfied that her experiment has paid off, the lady asks, "Would you care to hear anything else, brother? Perhaps a waltz?" The pianola jumps to life, playing Schubert's Valse Sentimental, Note 1, as she nonchalantly hums along. The gentleman then offers a card detailing the songbird defense system, which shows a diagram for the singing statue and its natural whistler. Booker wonders aloud that if Comstock uses songs to control the songbird, are there any other which render him docile? The lady recommended they ask the maestro himself. Upon looking up from the card, the couple has vanished again. After Booker moves the piano out of the way, Elizabeth spots Comstock House in the distance. She reasons that it is likely where the maestro can be found. Their destination now determined, the two set out. Through Prosperity Plaza, panicked citizens are crowding the quays, seeking passage on the last barges away from the terror of the Vox Populi. A woman stands petrified on the dock as her husband urges her to make the jump onto the barge. Newspapers mentioning the recent sinking of RMS Titanic litter the ground, an airy parallel situation of the passengers waiting for the last lifeboats. There is no RMS Carpathia for the Columbia citizens. As Booker and Elizabeth negotiate the stairs leading to the Port Prosperity station, the barge driver declares that he cannot take any more passengers or wait. The quay lies devoid of people with personal belongings, and overstuffed steamer trunks lie abandoned. There are two pathways leading into Port Prosperity Station, a bridge and gentle slope to the left, and a set of stairs on the right. Both are heavily guarded by Vox. A neatly dressed refugee attempts to escape the grasp of a member of the Vox Populi. He offers to buy his safety, but the Vox sneers at the pittance and pushes the helpless citizen down the stairs, after which he lies motionless. A battle develops, and there are several tiers that Booker can use to his advantage. Elizabeth can provide additional cover on the slope to the left, while the stairs on the right provide medical kits. A mosquito can also be summoned, as can a water puddle in front of the building. The fight escalates as a beast armed with a flak cannon provides supporting fire, while another barge brings reinforcements. After dealing with the enemies, closer examination of the plaza reveals more evidence of the Vox's merciless treatment of unlucky citizens who got in their way. There is a luggage cart overburdened with trunks, with its owner lying face down in a pool of blood. The door to the Port Prosperity Station building is locked. As Elizabeth fiddles with it, she reminisces about the songbird. The song was always a signal that brought her capture. When she was younger, she viewed him as a friend who brought food and books, but as she grew up, she began to see him as a warden. As for Port Prosperity Station, the once immaculate station building has seen better days. The centerpiece of the torn-up marble floor is a crumbled statue of Comstock, now surrounded by the red Vox banners. A board displaying founders' scalp marks, "Tell us, Prophet, do you see us coming?" Amongst the scalps are Marlowe, inventor of the murder of crows, Sultan Stall, a politician, Jeremiah Fink, Vanderwald H. Clark, and Flambeau, a Fink associate seen before. There is a place reserved for Comstock himself. The rest of the lobby features a dollar bill and a Veni Vidi Vici machine on each side of the shuttered ticket window. The wall above the entrance has a ghostly flight hook there which can be used to access a shotgun, a lockpick, some money and gear. One gate saying open, but the other is locked, which Elizabeth can open. Amidst the luggage in the rubble is a wash basin with an infusion bottle. Walking through the abandoned gate, Booker and Elizabeth sweep by abandoned luggage and debris, and come across 2 Vox soldiers dragging bodies across the floor. Past them is the gondola station to Grand Central Depot, and the formal entrance to Emporia. Elizabeth asks Booker about whether he believes that Comstock can predict the future. Booker replies with his dream about a fiery version of New York, while Elizabeth demurs. Vox reinforcements, including with a Lincoln-masked motorized Patriot, arrive in the empty station in a gondola. There is a tear to bring a gun automation and a rare, friendly Washington-masked motorized Patriot. A telescope can be found at the end of the pier looking towards the Emporia sign at Comstock House. The now vacant gondola features 2 driving cabins and is plastered with posters cheeringly advertising the Skyhook and the Skyline. The rear cabin contains a white-shirted and black-tied operator who committed suicide with a hand cannon, and contains a sniper. The front cabin must be opened by Elizabeth and contains a sniper rifle and the lever to start the ascent to Grand Central Depot. As the gondola slowly climbs its way into the Grand Central Depot, Elizabeth suddenly recognizes the gentleman and lady who mysteriously appear on the platforms of the advertising billboard along the skyline. They are Rosalind and Robert Lotus. Rosalind was the scientist responsible for the technology that keeps Columbia afloat. Quantum particles suspended in space-time from a fixed height. Elizabeth marvels at their reappearance, but questions why, as her books repeatedly state that they had vanished from society years previous. The Lotuses, in the meantime, perform mundane, ordinary activities on the vertigo-inducing ledges, playing baseball, arguing over the subjective tense, and waltzing to the tunes of a gramophone. Elizabeth quips, "Something tells me they're not exactly what they appear." As the gondola passes, Rosalind is posing for a painting, but Robert seems to have painted a portrait of himself on the easel, they remark. Odd, isn't it? What is odd? The fact that we sometimes finish each other's sentences, they both say together. Exactly. It would be odder if we didn't. Grand Central Depot is the opulent primary transit station for Columbia. It offers a gondola connection between Port Prosperity Station and the financial district of downtown Emporia for the Emporia area. Its large interior houses waiting areas, ticketing offices, shops and restaurants. After a strange encounter with the Lotus twins on the gondola from Port Prosperity Station, Booker and Elizabeth disembark at the dock at the Grand Central Depot to head to Comstock House. Unsurprisingly, the Lotuses have vanished, leaving the gramophone blaring, shiny happy people on the billboard ledge. After going up the stairs past steamer trunks and other abandoned luggage of the fleeting upper-class citizens of Emporia, Elizabeth comes across a cherubic poster of herself as an infant, stating, "The seed of the prophet shall sit the throne, and drown in flames the mountain of man." She remarked that Father Comstock was grooming her for his own ends. Signs of a great struggle abound further up the stairs with bodies, scattered debris, and crumbled iron gratings, all signs of the firefight that had erupted when the Vox attacked the founders. There are several ticketing areas for people to get scheduled information or to book passage on connecting areas. The first has 2 Vox Populi members pausing to enjoy a smoke amongst the corpses. A Minuteman's armory and a Veni Vidi Vici vending machine are set up across from the closed-down restroom. Behind the counter of the ticketing booth is a safe with a back room containing a hair fryer. A lockpick can be found on the desk next to a radio and a vial of salt. The announcer pleadingly asks for assistance amidst reports of gunfire. He promises to keep up the music, but the broadcast fades into static. Shortly after exiting the booth, Booker comes across 2 more Vox Populi members rounding the corner. The connecting corridor is strewn with more abandoned luggage. Branching routes are gated while fire rages in the closed-off passageways. Suddenly, a radio crackles to life with a new Vox announcer issuing orders to shoot on sight. A stabbed corpse is strapped on a trunk with his arms bound to strips of the tattered red curtains. "The Founders will bleed" is written on the window above with blood, while one of Preston E. Dawn's voxophones can be found at its feet. Further along is another well-lit atrium with a dollar bill machine on the far wall. A small ticketing booth contains a safe with a heater weapon in the back. After climbing the stairs, Booker and Elizabeth come across a citizen engaged in a forced dance with a Vox Populi member. They waltz on a luggage cart overseen by a statue of Columbia with a fireman and more Vox clapping in amusement. A tear for a gun automation is available for Booker to use. 2 more ticketing booths are on the far side of the room, closed and shuttered with a Minuteman armory station nearby in the corner. Booker and Elizabeth arrive at the Salty Oyster. The Salty Oyster, or the Salty Oyster Bar, is a bistro located in Grand Central Depot of Emporia. It was one of the places for the wealthy upper class of Columbia to get a drink and relax after a long day of work or shopping. The vast atrium is what truly gives the Grand Central Depot its name. A statue of Comstock dominates the space. However, it is now festooned with red fabric, as a Vox Populi member throws a grenade to set the sculpture alight. Vox agents will try to overrun Booker along with an Abraham Lincoln modified motorized Patriot and several firemen. The tears are available containing Tesla coils, medical kits, cover, a crank gun, and a volley gun scattered around the concourse. The ticketing booths contain a safe. One of the back rooms contain an RPG and a voxophone by Rosalind Lotus on the top of the newspaper stacks. A Columbia Creamery store is visible among the shops but is shuttered. Civilian bodies litter the area, some lined up against the wall and shot in execution style. The door to the connecting elevator to Emporia is locked, which Elizabeth can open with a hairpin. The area is guarded by 2 Vox snipers on the balcony. Booker can summon a tear for cover or a fright hook for direct confrontation. Hidden in an alcove on the bridges is a Minuteman armory. The Founders bookstore is located within the Grand Central Depot. Like all the other bookshops in the franchise, this store sold propagandistic reading materials with the hope that the youth of Emporia would become indoctrinated on the Founders' ideology at an early age. Upon approaching the one-way turnstiles, Elizabeth will mention going to the bookstore before leaving. The area contains a dollar bill and a Veni Vidi Viga machine, flanking the entrance. The pair come across Roland Flank's desperate voxophone, Sally. Concerned for the hostage's safety, Booker and Elizabeth discuss returning to the Salty Oyster. Finding the voxophone inside is required to access the back room of the bar. They go back to the Salty Oyster. The kitchen is filled with goods, a lockpicking kit, an infusion, a voxophone, and a new vigor with the name Return the Sender, granting Booker the power to stop incoming gunfire. Casting the vigor instantly deploys a shield in front of Booker that protects him from incoming damage. Holding the vigor allows Booker to absorb the damage from attacks and project it as a ball of molten metal, dealing heavy damage upon direct impact in a small radius. The more damage absorbed, the higher the damage of the projectile. Firing the ball at the scenery will instead deploy it as a stationary trap, exploding in a small radius for heavy damage upon detonation. After Booker takes the vigor, they head out to the central atrium. They then depart to downtown Emporia. The one-way turnstile leads to downtown Emporia. However, once inside, Booker and Elizabeth observe that the elevator is maintained within a dual-dial lock. Elizabeth will remark that most fools will keep the combination no more than 20 feet away. As Booker searches through a pile of books, he wonders aloud why a person would be so interested in lockpicking and code-breaking. Speaking of Elizabeth. Elizabeth retorts that they are relevant interests to a person locked in a cage. Booker finds the code written on a clipboard while Elizabeth declares that she won't be locked up again. Suddenly, Elizabeth grabs Booker's hand and puts her fingers to her lips. A curtain pulls to reveal a hidden recess in the wall with a whistling statue of Comstock. Quickly they duck under the counter just as the songbird appears at the window, scanning the room for the presence of its missing ward. Relieved but drained, Elizabeth rushes over to the elevator lock. Booker promises her that he will do anything to stop the songbird. Elizabeth is somber and unmoved. She adamantly states that a promise is not enough, and that if faced with returning to the tower or death, she chooses the latter option. Chapter 10. Downtown Emporia. Downtown Emporia is the primary commercial center of the district of Emporia in Colombia. Much of it is comprised of stately buildings and stores. But by the time that Booker and Elizabeth visit the district, it has fallen into ruin due to the actions of the Vox Populi. The metropolitan center consists of Harmony Lane, where entertainment and theater venues were located. The Market District, which contains the upper-class shops and boutiques that Colombia's wealthy could afford. The Cunningham Photo Studios, where the well-to-do of the city had their photos taken. Lotus Labs, the city's premier research center operated by the Lotus twins. And finally, Memorial Garden, notably where the sainted Lady Comstock was entombed. The stores within the district include Patriot Pride, the Art Gallery, Hudson's Fine Clothing, and Magical Melodies. Barely escaping detection by the songbird, Booker and Elizabeth descend from the Grand Capitol Depot in an elevator. They observe that Vox Populi have taken over with fighting, wreaking havoc in this city. As they enter the thoroughfare of the financial district, a rogue missile from one of the Zeppelins hits the elevator car. Clambering from the wreckage into the skyline, Booker and Elizabeth must deal with a handyman and several soldiers. After the dust settles, Booker and Elizabeth try to reach Comstock House through the Market District or Harmony Lane. The Market District is where the wealthy citizens of Colombia could do their shopping, with various companies selling groceries, wine, clothes, sweets, fruits and vegetables, with china and even art material. The area truly had most of the person's essentials. The district also housed the Lotus Labs, Rosalind and Robert Lotus's laboratory at home, and Magical Melodies, the popular Colombian artist Albert Fink's studio. The southern part of the market is entered from the financial district after the main gate had been unlocked by Elizabeth. When Booker DeWitt and Elizabeth enter, they arrive at a glass-ceiling-covered promenade where a fireman will assault them. The two businesses set here, Hudson's Fine Clothing and Parker and Cooperative Excelsior brand canned meats, are both on fire, and a Vox member has written, "The founders will bleed," in red on the wall. Further walking leads to a more open area with several businesses. It contains several benches, trees, and bushes along with an empty building dock. A poster set up by the Vox on the back of the Bank of the Prophet, looking over an angel statue reading, "The Vox Populi reclaim this place," which accurately describes the area. Red pendants hang from most buildings and the area is left in dismantled state. By the entrance to the central market, a dead man holding a return to sender figure lays next to a toppled Swiderick's condensed milk carriage. When they enter the central area, they will witness Vox Populi members executing rounded-up upper-class citizens. The Vox is then alerted by Booker's presence and will attack along with the motorized Patriot. The businesses are centered around a fountain, which is now completely dry. Most of the market district's fruit and vegetable stands are housed here, all of which have been left to rot. Upon leaving this area, 2 additional Vox soldiers will attack. After the defeat of the Vox, Booker and Elizabeth have the opportunity to explore the area, which contains several abandoned businesses, which can be looted for supplies as well as Lotus Labs. The door to the Lotus Labs are locked and cannot be opened at this time. When Booker and Elizabeth attempt to leave the area, they are attacked by a pair of Vox soldiers. After they defeat the Vox, Booker and Elizabeth continue towards Comstock House, passing Magical Melodies and Memorial Gardens to finally enter Victory Square, where there are signs of recent combat. They then go back through Harmony Lane. When entered this area, Booker and Elizabeth will find a large battle between the Founders and the Vox. Despite the motorized Patriot being among the Founders' forces, they are overpowered by the attacking Vox, who count along their numbers a fireman. After the defeat of the Founders, the Vox will quickly turn on Booker and Elizabeth. After the Vox are defeated, the area can be explored in relative safety and has an art gallery that can be unlocked. This area also contains Cunningham Studios, but like Lotus Labs, it cannot be entered yet. To leave downtown Emporia, the pair must walk up a wide stairway back to the Victory Square. Once in Victory Square, Booker and Elizabeth attempt to pass the gate but require an official's handprint. The automation mistakes Elizabeth for Lady Comstock, which gives Elizabeth the idea to use Lady Comstock's hand to pass through. So they travel to the Memorial, a cemetery in downtown Emporia where both Lady Comstock and the Lotus twins are buried. For a final resting place in the middle of the city, there are a lot of unburied bodies in the graveyard. Vox Populi and Founders have clashed here, leaving fresh corpses lying on top of old. The area has been desecrated with looting and graffiti on the walls. Fogs rolls over the silent headstones as lightning and thunder rage in the skies above. Some of Columbia's most prominent citizens are laid to rest here. Among them are the graves of the Lotuses, both oddly empty. A mausoleum looms over with a gear visible behind its gates. Lighting the other flaming torch with the Devil's Kiss will open them. The most prominent residence is that of the beloved Lady Comstock. She was laid to rest here after her untimely murder. Snippets from Mozart's Requiem, Mass in D minor, plays near the crypt. The gates are locked, but Elizabeth summons a lock through a tear. As she picks it open, she explains that her mother's body was preserved in an airtight chamber, with its fingerprints intact. Booker questions the sanctity of such an act, to which Elizabeth retorts that a mother who abandons her child doesn't draw a lot of sympathy in my book. As Booker opens the now unlocked gate, Lacrimosa begins to play. The glass coffin is surrounded by burning braziers, with the First Lady's placid features still visible. Elizabeth makes mocking small talk about how both of them were locked up in cages. Booker offers to open the coffin. However, upon inspecting the lock, the lights and music suddenly go out in the mausoleum. Zachary Harold Comstock deploys hidden siphons, and to take control of Elizabeth's powers, his voice admonishes her. "You see, child, you chose to follow a false shepherd, and he had led you astray. What I do for love. What lion does not cringe to see their cub in pain? But spare the rod, spoil the child. But if you won't listen to me, perhaps you'll listen to your mother." Comstock resurrects Lady Comstock as a deranged spectre. Nervously, Booker opens the gate to see the ghost resurrect the surrounding corpses in turn as her undead minions. Tears are available to assist Booker. Medical kits are located in the rear crypt, as well as under the archway near the stairs. A crane gun and a shotgun are on the upper walls. Eventually, her minions are dispatched and the siren vanishes into ethereal vapor. Elizabeth questions whether the spirit was the source of power. Booker asks, "But what is she, alive or dead?" Familiar voices ring out from the previously empty graves. Why do you ask, when the delicious question is when? The only difference between past and present is semantics. Lives, lived, will live, dies, died, will die. If we could perceive time as it truly was, what reason would grammar professors have to get out of bed? Like us all, Lady Comstock exists across time. She is both alive and dead. It is the Lotuses, digging their own graves. They explain that Lady Comstock finds her condition disagreeable, and that perception without comprehension is a dangerous combination. Elizabeth points out ghostly footsteps, which the Lotuses remark that the spirit still has unfinished business in this world. When Booker turns back, they have vanished. Upon coming to the graveyard's exit, the Lotuses now wait at the gate. They recognize Booker and Elizabeth's plight since they need Lady Comstock to open the gate. To reason with the deranged spirit, they explain that they must bring forth 3 truths about the First Lady. The evidence has been destroyed by Comstock, but are still accessible to someone with the power to alter time and space. Thus, Booker and Elizabeth must find 3 tears at the Cunningham Studios, the Bank of the Prophet, and the Lotus Labs. Cunningham Studios is the primary and most prestigious photo studio in Colombia. Rupert Cunningham owns and operates the business, with a smaller branch in the Patriots Pavilion in Soldiers Field and the larger flagship store located in Emporia. Cunningham Studios specializes in portraits, but would also photograph special occasions, death photos, and landmarks. Inside, Booker and Elizabeth can find a tear, which reveals the Lotus twins visit Rupert Cunningham after their deaths, and a voxophone that reveals he had taken their funeral photos and that Jeremiah Fink was the real cause of their deaths, not an accident upon Comstock's orders. They then follow the footsteps to Lotus Labs. Rosalind Lotus is a quantum physicist who established the Lotus Labs as her home and place of business. The front of the building functions as a lobby and library. When Booker and Elizabeth visit the location, the area is in a state of disrepair, with the bookshelves mostly bare. From a young age, Rosalind was curious with the possibility of multiple realities and decided she wanted to be a physicist. Many years later, in the course of experimentation with atoms, she was able to indefinitely suspend an atom in mid-air. Her colleagues referred to the process as quantum levitation, while Rosalind herself dubbed it the Lotus Field. She began to wonder about the possibility of suspending larger objects. At an indeterminate time, Rosalind met Zachary Hale Comstock, an influential religious figure who took great interest in her work. Comstock agreed to fund Rosalind's continued research into the Lotus Field in return for her help constructing a floating city which he had seen in premonition. Continued experimentation with the Lotus Field led to Rosalind's first interaction with Robert Lotus, a male version of herself in an alternate reality. By manipulating a pair of quantum-entangled atoms, the two were able to communicate across space-time barriers through Morse code. When she reported this information to Comstock, he instructed her to find a way for accessing such alternate realities, which he believed would act as windows into prophecy. She and Robert then collaborated to make a contraption that allowed them to enter other realities via the tears. Comstock would use the device extensively to see other realities and predict future happenings. He also later provided access to the Fink brothers, who had already been using tears to advance technology and music in Colombia by decades. However, the device had an adverse effect on Comstock, aging him rapidly and rendering him sterile. Believing Colombia would only prosper if one of his bloodline continued to lead the city, Comstock approached Rosalind and Robert for a solution. The Lotuses then sought, using their tear machines, to find a daughter for Comstock, and they were ultimately able to assist Comstock in procuring him a daughter, Elizabeth. On October 8th of 1893, Rosalind brought Robert and Elizabeth into her universe for the first time. As Elizabeth grew older, it was discovered that she had the power to open tears. Rosalind hypothesized that this was due to her finger remaining in her home universe, as it was cut off when the tear they brought her through closed too soon, decapitating the tip of her pinky. Robert and Rosalind then discovered that through the use of her powers, Elizabeth would fulfill Comstock's prophecy, leading to the destruction of New York City in 1983. Robert, wishing to undo their mistakes, issued Rosalind an ultimatum: join him in sending Elizabeth back to her original universe, or he would part ways with her. Unwilling to separate from her brother, Rosalind agreed to assist him, though she was not optimistic about their chances for success. Upon discovering this plan, Comstock ordered Jeremiah Fink to sabotage the machine they used to access tears. The deed was carried out, and they were declared dead on October 31st of 1909. However, they were not truly killed. Instead, they were scattered across time and space, able to appear whenever and wherever they wanted. While Rosalind was satisfied with this state, as she would be able to remain with her brother indefinitely, Robert was dissatisfied with the way they left matters in Colombia. Therefore, they continued their plan in this state and went on to find Booker DeWitt. Robert Lotus is a pioneer in the field of quantum physics, belonging to the same reality as Booker DeWitt. He was contacted by Rosalind Lotus, his female counterpart from an alternate reality and sister, after she discovered a way to mechanically engineer tears in her world and cross multiple universes. The two then correspondingly open a tear between their realities so they could meet face to face. They eventually become agents for Zachary Hale Comstock, developing technologies to aid in Comstock's development of Columbia. Rosalind had the back of the building, specifically the lower laboratory area and upper bedroom, partially dismantled in order to create the massive Lotus device, a machine capable of opening tears into alternate realities. She had beforehand, through experimentation of her Lotus field, discovered the existence of an alternate universe and an alternate version of herself, Robert Lotus. By manipulation of a pair of quantum-entangled atoms, they were able to communicate with each other with Morse code and construct this machine, after which Rosalind was able to open a tear into Robert's reality and bring him through to her own. Booker and Elizabeth follow Lady Comstock's ghostly footprints into Lotus Labs to discover one of the 3 tears which help reveal the truth about what happened to her along with the Lotuses. Through the tear, Lady Comstock is heard accusing Rosalind of having an affair with Comstock that resulted in Elizabeth's birth. Rosalind tries to tell Lady Comstock the truth by revealing that Elizabeth was a product of their little contraption. Lady Comstock, however, does not believe her and instead demands the child to be taken out of her house. Elizabeth's hatred of Lady Comstock is further kindled by this truth, and she coldly utters that she, Lady Comstock, deserves whatever Comstock did to her. They then head out to find the last tear, located in the Bank of the Prophet. The Bank of the Prophet was established in 1894 as a place for citizens to deposit their savings, establish credit, and receive loans. The central financial institution of Columbia. It was a symbol of the floating city's economic independence and stability. It was also Zachary Hale Comstock's biggest racket, as 50% of all transaction proceeded in the city went directly to him as a tithe. Because of this, the Bank of the Prophet was an especially meaningful target for the rage of the Vox Populi when they rose up against the founders and seized Emporia. When Booker DeWitt and Elizabeth reach the bank, much of the inside is dark and dreary. The bank itself consists of the foyer, some administrative offices, and the vault. The foyer is largely free of debris, with the 3 kinetoscopes detailing the rise of Columbia against the wall. The elevator is initially locked and barred. Upon returning to the memorial garden, the stairs are suspiciously covered in crows, a warning of the 2 zealots of the lady, a fireman, and a bunch of Vox Populi that will burst out from the doors. Several policemen are seen to have been executed in the lobby. Courtesy of the now broken elevator gates, Booker and Elizabeth can enter the lower bank vaults to find one of the secrets of Lady Comstock. Down in the vault, Booker will have to battle his way through numerous enemies before reaching his objective in the vault, a tear, one of the 3 that show the truth of the ghost of Lady Comstock. Upon reaching and opening the tear, a voxophone is left behind. The siren breaks open the vault door, and Booker will once again have to battle his way through Lady Comstock and her undead minions. Upon their return to Victory Square, it is here that Booker faces off against the siren for the final time. Elizabeth vents her frustration at the statue of her mother, now armed with the new knowledge of her birth from the truths gleaned from tears. Corpses from an unnamed battle reanimated, Vox Populi and founders alike became her unwitting slaves. When Booker finally defeats the siren, her minions become lifeless once again, and her restless spirit flutters around the gleamed statue of Lady Comstock. Elizabeth ventures to have another private conversation with the spirit, an amalgam of her mother's ghost and her own venomous frustrations with her parents. She reconciles with this otherworldly version of her mother, conspiring to work together against the man who brought such grief upon them. Summoning her supernatural energies one last time, the siren bypasses the elaborate door knocker entirely, reducing the gate into a pile of twisted metal. Elizabeth and Booker are free to gain entry to Comstock House. Chapter 11. Comstock House. Comstock House is the executive estate in Columbia. Comstock established the residence as his principal workplace and central headquarters of the founders. The structure, built upon the three heads of the founding fathers, is its own floating island connected by tethers to Emporia. It also functions as the private residence of Columbia's guiding couple, Zachary and Lady Comstock. However, the untimely murder of Lady Comstock and the escape of the scullery maid forced Comstock to close down the mansion to the public. Authorized personnel can access the building from the gate via drawbridge lined with 6 smaller statues of the founding fathers. The drawbridge is lowered in sections by pulling a lever set near the gate. Comstock House was intended to be a research facility dedicated to freeing mankind from sin through observation and case study. Data was collected from patients using techniques such as phrenology and a new process sponsored by Dr. Francis Pinchot involving simple listening, interviewing, and psychoanalysis. The most notorious case was with the capture and questioning of anarchist Daisy Fitzroy. A case study on one so low may provide the breakthrough. Pinchot led the controversial study. He noted that even if Fitzroy is simply possessed of a low animal cunning, it remains remarkable in one of both her breeding and background. Thus, to investigate it further is of vital importance to the future of Columbia. During the course of the study, it was discovered that Fitzroy had genius-level intelligence, scoring even higher on the test than the designer of the test, Dr. Pinchot himself. He noted further, for if every field hand and factory worker were to wake one day to similar perspicacity and design, what a different and terrible world we would soon have before us. However, the death of the researcher Pinchot and the escape of the anarchists led to a change in policy. The Comstock Re-Education Center, established at Comstock House in 1909, functions as an experimental behavior treatment lab where Comstock scientists scour all trace of rebellion from the minds of social descendants through brain surgery and mental conditioning. Sufferers from sin are no longer observed, but actively treated. Dr. Kittery is one of the researchers pioneering an elective surgery procedure involving separating the prefrontal cortex from the rest of the brain, in the belief that it will make patients much more tractable. Others disagree, saying it would render the patient a complete imbecile and unusable for study. Booker DeWitt and Elizabeth arrive on the bridge to Comstock House, while a ferocious lightning storm brews around them. As Booker pulls the lever to lower the downbridge, Songbird appears, pins him to the floor. The creature's eyes switch from green to red, hurling Booker through the window of an adjacent building. Booker faints amidst the broken glass and wakes up in a hazy vision of his office from the agency located at 108 Brewery State, New York City. It specialized in cases for clients who chose not to go to the local constabulary. DeWitt could act as an investigator, courier, recovery agent, or hired muscle. His jobs could involve extra-legal or even illegal acts. DeWitt, having struggled with money, gambling, and drinking, lived within his office. When Booker's vision clears, the chandelier falls from a damaged rotunda. Songbird claws its way inside to finish Booker off with a blow from its sharp talons. Suddenly, Elizabeth begs Songbird to let him live, and eventually sacrifices her freedom in return for his safety. Songbird takes off with Elizabeth, and Booker pursues them. Dropping down, the lightning strikes the upturned bridge sections, moving them into place. As Booker crosses, visibility diminishes as clouds and ripped patches of space-time engulf the bridge. He inadvertently passes through a tear, the summer storm giving way to a blizzard, confusing Booker. As he enters the building, he comes across several tears from which he can hear Elizabeth in obvious distress. Comstock House is in a severe state of disrepair, with debris littering the area and smashed windows leaving the first floor exposed to the elements. At the center of the room is a large statue of Elizabeth brandishing a sword. Her voice can be heard over an internal public address system, prophesying in a manner similar to Comstock. Her loving embrace. This portion of the building houses a lunatic asylum known as the Hall of Our Lady. Disturbed inhabitants wander aimlessly, guarded by the Boys of Silence. Each wears a mask of one of the Founding Fathers, and many seem to be experiencing the effects of interdimensional transfusion. Boys of Silence are outfitted in blue suits that are reminiscent of the school uniform. Their most noticeable feature is their large metal helmets, which amplifies their hearing but obscure their face. These helmets have been fitted into leather shoulder straps, fastened on by metal clasps, and padlocked shut. Apparently fitted with their uniforms early in life, and have since outgrown them, their blazer sleeves are too short for their arms and their trousers have torn. Despite being called boys, their hands show apparent deterioration of advanced age. Referred to as Elizabeth's children, they are in fact men brainwashed from childhood and forced into total subservience for decades. Because of Elizabeth's intervention, they also have limited control over Tears. This allows them to partially control the lunatics of Comstock House, and to teleport out of existence after raising the alarm or being attacked. The operating theater is an area designed for the purpose of performing operations before an audience and under the observation of head surgeons. It overlooks the surgery wing of Comstock House. The surgery wing is in the center of the operating theater and the area in which the actual procedures are performed. After passing a room with a large statue of Elizabeth, Booker enters a room centered on an elevator shaft. Approaching the door marked restricted alerts the Boys of Silence guarding it and causes the lunatics to attack. After dealing with the lunatics and hitting the intercom button, Booker demands to see Elizabeth. The gates remain sealed, but an elevator descends through the shaft. A sign beside the restricted entrance says that it can only be opened on approval of the warden, whose office is located on the 3rd floor. The 2nd floor rooms contain the room Where We Lie, a dilapidated surgical center where medical procedures are performed on inmates. A tear reveals Comstock's attempt to bend Elizabeth's will. The room Where We Weep, a crematorium where the dead are incinerated in the facility's furnace. The room Where We Cleanse, the bathing facilities for the institution. A tear reveals Dr. P. Pettifog and Elizabeth's first meeting. He mentions that Booker has been gone for a long period, but Elizabeth seems to remain undaunted. The room Where We Sleep, the asylum's dormitory, a long narrow room with beds for about 31, it is guarded by another Boy of Silence. Booker boards the elevator which stops at the 2nd floor and deposits him in the atrium. Another Boy of Silence is close by, but this time Booker opts to avoid it with stealth. A kinetoscope is around the corner to the left of the elevator entrance, but the path continues to the right. Elizabeth continues to speak prophetically over the PA system, though tears continue to reveal a different Elizabeth in great pain. Having come nearly full circle, Booker finds himself back at the atrium, but the stairs up to the 3rd floor are blocked by guards, a zealot of the lady and a pair of gun automations. A tear around the right corner reveals that Elizabeth, after being taken, waited for Booker so long that she was close to starvation. The 3rd floor rooms contain the room Where We Work, a series of rooms where the inhabitants do manual labor, creating the faces of motorized patriots, flags, and other patriotic memorabilia. The room Where We Learn, a classroom where the lunatics are brainwashed via use of propaganda films. An instrumental version of Pachelbel's canon accompanies the film playing. A tear in the room Where We Work allows Booker to listen in on a conversation between Dr. Pettifog and Elizabeth, which reveals that at least 6 months have passed since Elizabeth and Booker were separated. There is a kinetoscope at the right of the entrance to the 1st room. In the last room, yet another Boy of Silence stands guard. With a piece of gear on the table behind him, a voxophone can also be found at the far of this room behind the column. When Booker enters the Where We Learn classroom, Elizabeth professes over the PA system that she has long since given up on Booker, having been indoctrinated by Comstock herself. Through a broken one-way mirror, Booker proceeds on to the security center, kinetoscope along the way. Past the interrogation area on the upper floor is the warden's office. This room is dominated by a viewing monitor tuned recording the 1st floor. Booker flips the switch to open the security gate, but is immediately attacked. When he reaches the security center lobby again, Elizabeth is heard over the loudspeaker, proclaiming that she is continuing Comstock's work, and will not only drown the world below in holy fire, but also continue this act across 1,000,000 other worlds. She states that the mind, in order to be purified, must be exposed to every version of itself, explaining the condition to the lunatics in the asylum are in. Booker then heads down to the elevator to cross the open restricted area. Booker passes through the security gate and runs into Rosalind and Robert Lotus next to a tear. After the duo and the tear disappear, Booker continues into the destroyed operating theater. He spots Elizabeth across the room, silhouetted in an open doorway. She laments that she has lost control over everything, the lunatics and her plan, and that it took all of her strength to bring Booker to the same period. She offers her hand to Booker. He sees that she is now an old woman. Standing beside Elizabeth on a roof ledge, Booker observes Columbia attacking New York City in the year 1984, just like in his vision. Elizabeth tells him that her hope for rescue faded with time, and when Booker claims that he was on his way to save her, she reveals that in each alternate reality, Songbird always stops him. Elizabeth, resigned to her current fate, created the tear that Booker ran through on the bridge to Comstock House, so that she could help Booker save her alternate past self. She gives him a coded message and opens the tear, sending Booker back in time to 1912. Booker then heads across the operating theater into the surgery wing. Dr. Pettifog and Dr. Powell are beginning the operation to attach Elizabeth's collar without sedation, while Comstock looks on from above. A pair of small siphons prevent Elizabeth from opening any tear that might save her. Booker heads upstairs to disable the machines, encountering armed guards, automated turrets, and a motorized Patriot along the way. When Booker disables the siphons, Elizabeth opens a tear to a field beset by a twister, killing the two surgeons. Booker heads back down, frees Elizabeth, and gives her the coded message. Elizabeth swears to kill Comstock to keep him from turning her into a monster. After a brief discussion, Booker vows to kill Comstock in her place. Heading back upstairs, Elizabeth picks the locked door to Powell's office, giving the pair access to a gold bar, a voxophone, an infusion, and the gate to the elevator leading to the library. Booker and Elizabeth emerge in the foyer to the Comstock House Library. The actual library appears to be barricaded. The two venture out to board the Hand of the Prophet. The pair emerge in a library on the top of Comstock House and fight their way through an onslaught of enemies. Elizabeth can pick the lock to a small office area that contains a Veni Vidi Viga machine and a safe, as well as a voxophone recording. At the end of the roof, they come across the Founder's gondola, programmed to return to the airship. They commandeer the vehicle and leave Comstock House. Chapter 12. Hand of the Prophet and the Sea of Doors. The Hand of the Prophet is a massive airship, serving as the flagship of the Colombian Zeppelin fleet and Zachary Hale Comstock's personal warship. The Hand of the Prophet is divided into 3 main decks, plus a service deck and a bridge. The first deck is the hangar deck, primarily used to accommodate the ship's crew and multiple gunships that can dock on the vessel to transport cargo and personnel. This level has 3 open ports for these gunships, connected by wooden catwalks and defended by 4 gun automates. At the front of this level is the pod launch bay, where the controls to launch motorized Patriot pods can be found. The galley, barracks, armory, and supply stores are also found on this deck, in the maintenance facilities on both port and starboard sides. The second and largest deck is the crew deck, and houses several workshops, where motorized Patriots are built and housed in pods to be launched in battle. They are fed down to the lower decks through trapdoors leading to the skylines that cover the outside of the vessel. Another pod launching bay can be found at the front of the deck, and the lower halves of the flagship's wings can be accessed on the sides. The third deck is the engineering deck, an entirely interior deck that is accessed by doors near the wings on each side of the level. This area is mainly occupied by machinery. The main room containing a skyline and a central machine encased in a transparent container. The smaller room is guarded by 2 rocket automations and leads to the exterior of the ship, where a skyline to the bridge can be found. The bridge overlooks the surface deck, accessed from the back of the level. The entrance consists of a small room dominated by a miniature of Monument Tower cut away to reveal the massive siphon within it and Elizabeth's residence at the top. This room also has Comstock's predictions imprinted into the walls around the statue, as the events that occurred are clearly shown in 6 parts, beginning with the damaging of the tower and ending with what is about to be revealed. This room leads into a ceremonial sanctuary, with a stained glass picture of Elizabeth as Comstock's successor. Artificial waterfalls and baptismal font in the middle, the catwalks around the top of the room lead to Comstock's quarters, including a chalkboard showing a timeline with forking paths, and the central bridge overlooking the surface deck, from which the ship is steered. The Latin phrase Audimus Petria Nostria Defendere, which translates to "We dare defend our country," is seen in the steering room. The surface deck holds an exposed generator that powers the ship. Surrounded by skylines and raised bridges, these skylines lead to the top of the bridge, which serves as a sniper's nest. A large image of the personified Columbia is imprinted into the deck. Booker DeWitt and Elizabeth access the flagship using a gunship atop Comstock House, which is programmed to dock in the lower level of the ship, fighting off both Founder and Vox Populi gunships on the way. They eventually reach the ship, only to find it heavily defended by the last remnants of the Founder's forces and besieged by the Vox Populi. Fighting both factions, they ascend through the ship by clearing skylines carrying motorized Patriot pods on each level, eventually reaching the bridge. Here, they realize that Monument Island is the huge siphon that is preventing Elizabeth from actually creating tears. Moving through the sanctuary, they find Comstock waiting for them, who suggests that Booker knows more about Elizabeth and her missing finger than he is telling. After Comstock becomes aggressive with Elizabeth, Booker kills him in a fit of rage. After Elizabeth becomes concerned about Comstock's words, she and Booker resolve to fly the ship to Monument Island to destroy the siphon and learn the truth. Steering the ship towards the island, they are besieged by Vox Populi forces who seek to destroy the Hand of the Prophet and kill Elizabeth. At the moment, Elizabeth works out the meaning of a letter given by her older self, tearing the whistlers from a statue's head and using it to control Songbird. The Vox Populi begin an assault on the flagship's main generator, and Songbird helped defend the surface deck from multiple Vox Zeppelins and gunships. The Hand of the Prophet eventually arrives at Monument Tower, where Songbird is instructed to bring down the siphon. Upon destruction, the siphon releases a huge electromagnetic pulse, causing Booker to drop the whistler and visibly destabilizing the Hand of the Prophet. The 3 escape the ship through a tear created by Elizabeth, leaving the fate of the Hand of the Prophet unknown, though the ship ceases to exist regardless, due to the events which follow. The Sea of Doors. After Booker and Elizabeth order Songbird to destroy the siphon, Elizabeth's powers become fully restored. She transports herself, Booker, and Songbird to the underwater city of Rapture, where Songbird is crushed by the water pressure outside the city. Confused, Booker wonders where Elizabeth has taken him, to which she replies that this place is a doorway, one of many. After riding the bathysphere to the surface, they emerge at the lighthouse. The night is glistening with the light of countless stars. Elizabeth at first has trouble opening the door to the Sea of Doors because she seems to not have the key to open it. To her surprise, it suddenly appears in her right hand. She realizes it was always there. She just couldn't see it from the right angle. The duo head through the door and emerge surrounded by countless lighthouses. Booker is astonished and confused as to what this place is and why Elizabeth led him here. She explains that there are a million worlds, all different, all similar. She also explains that in each world there are constant and variables, stating that there is always a lighthouse, always a man, always a city, that all things remain the same, which is why in this realm, all the doors to every reality are represented as a lighthouse. Yet there are variables that account for differences and opposite choices, making any and all realities unique. They then go through a door to a different series of lighthouses that relate to the realities that Columbia exists in. The pair see other versions of themselves as they find and walk through another door. Elizabeth then makes Booker relive his past, from rejecting the baptism to becoming addicted to alcohol and gambling to selling off Anna to the rowboat ride to the lighthouse. Horrified about how things played out in his past, Booker becomes convinced that in order to undo what had happened, he needed to smother Comstock as a baby. Instead, Booker is taken back to the baptism site. Elizabeth shows him that only in one set of realities he rejected the baptism. However, in the other set of realities he accepted the rite, was baptized, erased his past, and was born again as a new man, Zachary Hale Comstock. Through Rosalind and Robert's device, Comstock saw that Columbia would only prosper as long as his bloodline continued to rule the city. However, overuse of the tear device took its toll on Comstock. He aged rapidly and soon discovered that he had been rendered sterile. Desperate to have a blood successor, he conferred with the Lotuses, and the three deducted that an heir could be procured from another universe. In October of 1893, Robert was able to find Booker DeWitt after rejecting Preacher Whitting's baptism. Booker, still regretful, had spiraled deep into alcoholism and gambling debt. Comstock had Robert offer to wipe away those debts in exchange for Booker's infant daughter, Anna DeWitt. Booker haltingly agreed, and Robert brought Anna to Comstock. Almost immediately regretting his decision, Booker pursued Robert to retrieve Anna. He found them in an alleyway preparing to pass through a tear back to Comstock's reality. Although Booker tried to stop him from taking Anna through the tear, Comstock managed to escape with her. The tear severed Anna's pinky finger. The resulting scar she hid with a thimble. Comstock saw Anna as the key to his dream of remaking the world a reality. However, the child was rejected by Lady Comstock, who believed her to be Rosalind and Comstock's bastard child. At Lady Comstock's insistence, the child not live under their roof, Comstock created Monument Island Tower to house her. When the child began to develop tear-making powers, Comstock saw the creation of the siphons to keep them in check. Renaming her Elizabeth, Comstock began to call her the Lamb of Columbia, and the founders would come to worship her as the savior. Overuse of the Lotus's tear machine continued to deteriorate Comstock's body, giving him cancer and causing him to have the appearance of an elderly man at 38 years of age. The tears gave him the knowledge that Booker would eventually find a way to take Elizabeth from him. He began to forewarn the populace that a false shepherd would appear, and began formulating a plan to make Elizabeth servile to him. Rosalind and Robert saw the future of Columbia, and what Elizabeth would become through their machines. In an event to prevent such a future, they plotted to take Elizabeth from Comstock and return her to her original universe. Comstock soon discovered what they are doing, and ordered Jeremiah Fink to sabotage their contraption, which seemingly killed the two as they were using it. The effects of the sabotage in fact caused the Lotuses to exist across all spaces and time, giving them the ability to appear wherever and wherever they wanted. Still determined to stop Comstock, they devised a plan to send Booker to Columbia to retrieve his long-lost daughter, Elizabeth. Then, at the baptism location, the various alternative Elizabeths agree to drown Booker, preventing Comstock from being born. With this, Columbia is also erased. Thank you for listening to the Bioshock Infinite audiobook. For more audiobooks in the future, keep in touch with the Rosetta Stone channel. Goodbye.